Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I don't know what the fuck just happened this weekend, but we're here to talk about it. I'm Luce, that's Juice, and we're back on the microphone. If you were watching on the YouTube another on Tap show about, I don't know, a little less than an hour ago, you probably heard from us very recently, but nonetheless, Juice, buddy, before we get into baseball, how are you?
Double duty today for us. Pissed off. It's better than being pissed on. So
It's true.
we'll let out. We'll air. We should call this episode the airing of grievances, because I think that both of us are going to have some upset words for the ball club this evening.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're correct, Juice. So as we kind of noted to everybody, big weekend, busy weekend from the Cubs on Tap contributors. We still are awaiting the rehab stint conclusions for Mr. Joey Ricotta and Mr. Tyler Edmonds. Tyler is, according to reports, very close and will likely be activated on Tuesday. But outside of that, man, we're back talking, unfortunately, about a sweep. Just quickly running through the scores. Friday was a 3-2 loss. Cubs got walked off by Jean Segura in that one. A Caleb Killian shelling and not enough runs with the bases loaded on Saturday led to a 7-6 loss, and then today a rare Keegan Thompson letting up runs instance was ultimately the difference in this one. 4-3 was your final. Luis Arias ended up driving in the game-winning run for the Fish, and they complete the sweep. They improved to 16-13. Cubs fall to 14-13 after this latest stretch. And Juice, we could talk about some positives first, right? At least because there were still some good things from this series. Most notably, your two aces continue to be aces. Stroman pitched very well on Friday night. Steele pitched very well today. I think there's no concern with those two. They're continuing to do their thing. It just was what it was in terms of, not enough offense and just the unfortunate hitting, from the fucking Fish. But nonetheless, Bellinger's back. Good to see him back. 2 home runs in this series as well. He's got that newfound dad strength now as well, coming off the paternity leave list. That's good to see. Outside of that, I don't have a ton of good things to say about this ball club. So to your point, Juice, let's air some of these grievances.
Yeah, I think what's so frustrating about this series is you look at 3 absolutely winnable games.
Yes.
All 1-run losses. And that's when you start to look inward, right? You start to look at what were the reasons they lost? Well, some of it's a lack of offensive production. You're getting deep, good starts out of your starting pitching. And the Cubs just lack that runaway and hide ability, right? The great teams are the ones that you blink and you're down 10. No matter what the sport is, right? It's a matter of the good ones seem to get up on you, and then when you are up, you don't feel comfortable. And there are a lot of moments throughout this series where the Fish, I'm sure, did not feel comfortable. The Cubs were clearly putting runners on base, but they struggled with runners in scoring position. Yesterday's ball game was maybe the most frustrating one of the year. 3 times you load the bases and limited return. I think they only scored 2 or 3 runs with those, runners in scoring position. A lot of times they had bases loaded, no outs, and they didn't come home with a run. That can't happen, especially when you're a nitpicky, in-betweener team like the Cubs. We know this. It's not a full major league roster yet. You're looking inward at this team and you're saying that there are still guys, and this is what I think is so frustrating to Cub fans. There's just guys at AAA who are just mashing the ball, who could help you win 1-run games right now. And obviously we're alluding to Matt Mervis and, Morel, but there's still guys on this roster, like Rucker out of the pen, that. Yeah, he's okay, but the problem is in this long stretch of games that the Cubs are in without an off day, your depth is going to be severely tested. And I think it's clear The Cubs just don't have that depth right now. They don't have. There's a lot of question marks on the bullpen. You look at Merriweather, you don't know what you're getting out of him. Rucker, you didn't know what you were getting out of him. You look at I'm missing Fulmer. You don't know. There's Brandon Hughes on the DL. So that's another like pure arm that is in this pen that really was your only lefty specialist per se that you had prior to Leiter having the season that he's having. Like you went into this season with one left-handed guy. Leiter, yeah, he was great against lefties, but you didn't know what you were getting out of Leiter Jr. going into this year. You just didn't. Mm-hmm. So there's so many parts on this roster. I'm like, hey, I hate that we have to sit on here and clap hands and be excited about the fact that Nelly Velasquez got to stay and they finally DFA'd a guy who was not playing. Like this is the Cubs. The Cubs slogan for this year and Twitter handle is "Next starts here." Like I'm tired of next. I want now. Now starts here. Right now starts here. Like the division is for the taking. The Cubs could be a team that you don't want to play. They have the pitching. They have the starting pitching. They have the fielding ability. They can beat you on the base pass. They're looking for two reliable run batted in guys right now. And back end of the bullpen help. That's all you need. Like most of these teams you're looking at right now have way more holes than where the Cubs are at right now. I mean, realistically, you don't need to go out and trade for a bat. Really, let's look at it right now. The Cubs do not need to go out and trade for a bat at any position. They don't. They have it all in-house if they want to fix it. Bullpen, maybe a different story. Starter, obviously you'd like to have an embarrassment of riches there, but they're going to try to do what they can with Hendricks and with Wisniewski in the meantime. But the problem that you sit here and it's these games against like a team that you should beat, that you should run away and hide from, that you just see so often from this team that it's a struggle. And what hurts is like it should be now starts here, and now they need to bring up Mervis and Morel. Like it should happen now because it's enough watching Hosmer ground out all over the diamond. He's been okay. You can keep him on the roster if you want to as another first baseman if you're willing to walk away from Rios or whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, like this is not the best roster they can put out there, and that is what is so frustrating.
Completely agree. And I think there's a couple of ways you can go about it, right? Like if you're the Cubs and you think a guy like Morel maybe could benefit from staying down a little longer, right? Maybe just because he was rushed straight to the MLB from AA, they gave him the opportunity to kind of learn on the fly in 2022. Maybe he's a guy that you say, hey, we're okay with him remaining in AAA until late June. But I think with the lack of power, I know, don't get me wrong, I know Morel's got power. He was leading the International League in home runs. That's not forgotten here. But because of what Mervis can do from the left side of the plate, I think is why he's the first one that people are kind of chiming for, right? To get the look. We've seen Morel at the majors, right? We know what he needs to work on at the major league level to be a better player. I think there's a world where Rios for Mervis makes a lot of sense. And I saw something from, fellow Cubs podcast here at On Tap Sports and our boys over at the Dingers Pod. And our boy Jake Bunowski tweeted about, you can't cut bait with Hosmer too early because that sends maybe like a negative, for signings and things like that. But I think in the terms of like Torrens, they did the right thing. Torrens was a guy that you gave a spring training invite to and he made your roster. Rios kind of the same way. You signed him to a 1-year deal. It was a major league deal, but you still didn't know what you were getting. And I think the one gray area with we're not saying DFA Trey Mancini. That's completely different, right? Hosmer literally costs you the vet minimum. And I think if you're going to bring up Mervis now, though, I think there is a world where Hosmer being on the roster still makes a lot of sense, at least for a month or two. And then if he's still just hot dog shit at the plate, Then that's when Christopher Morel comes banging in from Iowa and says, hey, my turn. Give me that roster spot. And then again, to your point, Juice, they solved a lot of their internal woes, I think, by this, what could be a youth spark plug in terms of the lineup. But I agree with you as well with the bullpen. Like there are two levels, not even two. There are like three levels to this bullpen right now. There's I know exactly what I'm getting, and that's Keegan and Alzolay. And Hughes when he's healthy, but obviously him on the IL sucks already. There's the can be really good for the most part, have been solid, but you still aren't 100% sure. And that's like your lighter juniors of the world, right? That is, who else? I'm trying to, pick names here. That's, in my opinion, your Jeremiah Estrada. He had a good look, and up till this point, I think Rutger has been a little bit like that, but still, I don't think Rutger is a guy that you want to have to count on for 162. But there's still so many guys in this pen that you go, you don't know what you're getting out of them when they come out of the pen on a daily day basis. And that's Fulmer, that's Merriweather. It's enough guys where you start to wonder, you have some of these arms at AAA. Ryan Barucki finally gets the call, right? And hopefully we get to see a little bit of him and what he looks like as the lefty out of the pen. He got selected today. But there are so many other guys in Iowa that I think are worth a look. Brendan Little, I think it is a name that comes to mind immediately. A big a lefty that, again, you need lefties like you need air right now in this pen. There's still a lot. I think to your point, Juice, right? This Cubs team still has, in terms of a roster construction, a lot to be desired. And because of that, it makes 1-run losses in 3 consecutive games to a not terrible team, but not a great team in the Marlins really frustrating. Really
frustrating. And two, like you just look, I took the Bellinger being out on paternity leave as like my own little small case study. Like, what production do you get when he's not here from the left side? And the answer was none. Like, you just don't get lefty power or, anything opposed to, Ian Happ. You really, that's the only bat that you get from that left side that you feel comfortable with.
Yep.
So why not bring up Mervis? I'm starting to just, what is I said it earlier on in the year. What's the point to this year? What is it? I mean, you started so well, and now, we were talking off air, they're 3-7 in their last 10. They're not playing very good baseball. They're losing a lot of close ones. Kind of seems like they need a little spark. And this is I think this was an underrated tough part of the schedule that we maybe didn't talk enough about, not having the off day. But the problem too is that bullpen is being just ran into the ground. And we talked about it before this series and said the trends that they have going right now are not good ones. They're not getting deep performances consistently outside of Stroman and Steele.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, Smiley here and there, but we need that third to give the bullpen another consistent day off. And that's when this starts to show. You start to see guys like Keegan give up runs because it's clear that they're coming out there too often for the beginning of this season. And that's the game now. I know that they're going to do a lot of back and forth. We're going to see some of the guys that you mentioned. We're going to see guys come in and out. We saw Caleb Killian get a start because, for a lot of this was, and with all things considered, it's a tough spot to come in. You're having, going into that start, you're having a cup of coffee. You're starting this game and you're going back down. And especially with the way that the pen has been taxed, David Ross probably went to Caleb and went, hey, man, like, no matter what happens, I just need you to get me through today. Like, you battle, like, no matter what. And that's what makes the fact that they had bases loaded so many times hurt so much, because the night before, the Friday, was, I think, set the tone for the whole weekend, because it was a game that should have been won. And he lost it because, a couple of small hits and Rucker, but you're already at a point where you need to have, a decent performance out of a guy that you can't trust, is iffy in terms of that those tiers that you have made. But he has to pitch because you're in this middle of this run where you don't have a day off until the 11th. Like it's tough. But any normal day, you probably walk away winning that ball game, right? Then yesterday was more like just get the runners in. And I think today was a kind of a accumulation of all the games, this weekend, that they just came out flat. Like, I mean, a lot of today, there was not a lot of fight in the lineup. That was a crisp, quick game. I mean, in the middle of it, took a nap and woke up and I was like, oh, I'm going to miss maybe a couple innings. No, it was already in the 7th. And I'm like, oh man, it must have been some at bats must have been really quick. But I get it. Like, you're traveling to another city. It's get the hell out of there after getting your butts whipped and having close ball games that are frustrating. I get the ball club is probably at this point, just get us the hell out of here. But the problem is that, the Cubs are going to middle around this 500 mark if improvements aren't made and these trends keep up. And that's why, going into the season, I had them at a 79 to 81 team. That's because I just don't know what this front office is thinking in terms of this year. What are you trying to accomplish? You're just trying to get by? That way you can spend more money next year when the player pool is bigger, or you're closer to some of these prospects being fully in. You need to announce to your fan base what this is all about. And bringing up guys like Mervis and Morel announces it to us, but it also goes to that dugout. Yeah, I'm ready. We're ready. The Cubs are ready to roll. And that's why I think sooner the better for some of these guys, because this is just starting to get to the point where you're leaving winnable games on the paper here. I mean, we're up to 5, maybe 6. Maybe there's 6 games already that you look at that you're like, man, they should have won that one. And that
6.
Those add up. In September, when you're 2 games out and you have to win a series, you're like, man, if I just went 3-3 in those 6, I don't need to win this one. Or I feel like I'm in my own driver's seat. I'm not hoping for somebody else to beat another team to get into the playoffs. Those are the ones that early on in the season, we're going to look back at a lot of these and go, man, what the hell? And they did it without the best 26 man roster out there, which is so frustrating.
Agreed 100%. I mean, you look at, like you said, Juice, the times in some of these games. That Saturday game, very traditional length in terms of what you would expect for a ball game, 3 hours, 13 minutes for that slugfest. But, even the walk-off on Friday, just a 2-hour, 26-minute game, and then today's game was 2 hours and 18 minutes. I mean, it flew by. I think this Cubs team, this road trip, I think, is just starting to add up, right? You had a very hard-fought month of April. The bullpen's been used a lot, right? We've seen some of the struggles out of Hayden Wesneski early on. Smiley had some rough starts in that Red series and things like that. And even, having Tyone out on the IL right now is just killing them, absolutely killing them, because you have Javier Assad come up for that one game against the Dodgers, and then they have to use 5 bullpen arms just to get through that game. Now with Killian, sure, you only have to use 3 other guys, but Merriweather throws 2 innings. Estrada almost throws 2 innings, right? That adds up. So, it really is starting to feel like, you're seeing how important Tyone is to this rotation right now, because he is that 3 and you expect him to be that workhorse, but they just need that consistent guy right now. And you know what? Depending on how he does and when he returns, maybe Hendricks being able to be that guy that goes 6 innings for you is just what you need for this team right now. Just keep them in the ball game, give you the distance, keep that bullpen fresh, because we've seen when this bullpen's fresh what they can do. It's very good. It's high quality stuff for the most part. It's just you see these stretches, like you said, Juice, where this team gets worn down, and I think this series was an epitome of that. They just got worn down. Again, the Marlins are not a bad baseball team. Like, this is not the Marlins of 4 years ago where they were just absolutely atrocious. They got some really nice young players. They've got an incredibly good young pitching staff that I think gets heavily overlooked. They made some sneaky good acquisitions in the offseason. AJ Puck being one of those acquisitions. He's now their closer. Was a starting, pitching prospect with the Athletics. Didn't pan out with the A's. Marlins said, we'll take him, and then they turn him into their back end of the bullpen arm. This is a decent team that they just got beat by. But that's the measuring stick, right? Is what are you? Like you said, Juice, this year. Are you a middling team that's growing for 2024? Or are you legitimately trying to make some level of noise in 2023? Because you can't go and beat a team like the Padres in 3 games to fall to the Marlins and get swept, right? It'd be one thing if you at least won one. Then you say, all right, shit happens. You lose a series, move on. You got swept. That hurts. That puts you 5 out of first place in the NL Central now. And again, it's early, but it's early enough where they can now you start looking yourself in the mirror and saying, what are we? What is this team this year, and how are we going to win? Because if this bullpen is taxed by June, they're fucked. Because outside of Steele and Stroman right now, nobody's giving you consistently 6 innings. Nobody. Hayden hasn't done it. Hayden had 1 game where he went over 6. He went 7 against the A's. Smiley's gotten you close, but he's still, he's done it a couple times. This is really where they need Tyone to come back and give you those consistent 6-inning starts. And then you need either Hayden to get his shit together or Hendricks to step back into the lineup and just give you 6 on a consistent basis. So that way you're not burning 4 and 5 bullpen arms, every other night, because they're just not going to be able to keep it up.
Ron, do you think that there's a scenario where Hayden finds himself in the bullpen this season? When Hendricks is healthy?
No.
Not even as another 3rd inning guy, 3 innings plus guy.
I think he's in Iowa. I really do.
Fair.
I don't think they're taking their sweet ass time with Mervis and Morel. I don't think they're going to rush Wesneski into something he's not ready for. If the future long-term plan for him is to be a starter, right?
Yeah.
If this team was closer to competing and he's just, hey, we think next year you can overtake a starting rotation spot. This year you're just kind of filling in for Kyle. That's different. Then sure. Then I say, yeah, then him going to the bullpen to be that 3-inning guy makes a ton of sense. But I think because of what we're already seeing with guys like Morel and Mervis, because again, if they thought this was a competition year, Morel and Mervis are already on the roster, and Rios and Hosmer are somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's just the nature of the beast. So I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility. But considering the fact that they've already sent Javier Assad back to AAA to stretch him out to be a starter, it's not like you could just call him back up to be a 3-inning guy out of the pen. So Hayden could be, but I still think Keegan is ultimately that guy that's like your 2 to 3 inning guy.
And
right? You got those 2 back there. And then I think once maybe some of these guys come up from either like AAA Iowa or maybe even somebody makes the jump from AA Tennessee somehow, you'll start to see some of those pen arms take over for guys like Merriweather and guys like Rucker and some of those back end guys that we're not sold on yet.
Well, I got that question from a buddy that I know. We were talking on the golf course, and he was like, do you think that, like, when Hendricks does come up, I was in your boat. I had said, I think they'd see him as a starter. Regardless of that, I think they want him to be a starter in the future. They see him as like a top of the, maybe not a top, but a 2 or a 3, if you can add a 3rd pitch, but I just asked that now because as you look at this roster, like, man, like, I love having 2 3+ inning guys, right? But if I had 3, like, I just, like, you get to that point where, yeah, like, maybe the bullpen isn't as taxed if you have 3 of those guys who could do that, and that's maybe you start looking in the minors to see what you can get out of that realm. But I don't think that there is anybody else that is comfortable going, being converted from a starter down to that. You mentioned Assad. I think they see him as a starter. The only other one, even then, like, I don't think that they're going to do that to Ben Brown either. I know he just went to AAA. He's a starter. I think if you look up and down that, and even here I mean, low A, like high A here in South Bend, I can't think of any name that's, and I'm sure that's the same for double A that is within that. But
Yeah.
you just look at this stretch and you're like, man, like you wish you had like one more deeper guy, one more guy who could go that extra inning. Because I feel like a lot of times over, and you mentioned it, like the Killian start, the Saad start, that really puts you behind the 8 ball. Because it's like after 4, you got to piece together 5 more innings of baseball. That's 10 innings combined over this stretch. And then it's just like if Hayden can't go deeper, then you're talking about 15 innings worth of piecing together, where you really, if you would have got good stretches out of him, maybe you're looking at 9 innings that you had to account for. And that's, 6 innings in a stretch like this means so much. So much. It's another day for 3 guys that you get out of that. And that's why I asked that question. I just wonder if maybe even prior to tomorrow or sometime over the stretch, if we're going to see another bullpen roster move, just a movement up and down to add another fresh arm to this pen, because it just seems like a lot of these guys are on their last leg right now.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna bounce back an idea to hear, Juice, while we're on the topic right now. We've seen Killian consistently come up now as a starter and really not get the job done. On his return to AAA, do the Cubs maybe talk about Killian becoming a 2 to 3 inning guy? Because we've seen it in the past when he has started at the major league level that he'll cook a lineup the first time through, and then they get him that second time through.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is he's working on command. And the last thing you want is a guy coming out of that bullpen that you don't know if he's throwing strikes or not. So I don't know. Maybe he's more effective if he's not nibbling. You just tell him, like, hey, man, you're going to throw 3 innings. Go out there and just attack. Throw hard. Throw your best breaking stuff. You don't have to worry about, going tactically through 3 times in the order. You just got to – everybody's going to see you one time. Right. If everything goes well. So maybe that gets him back in the strike zone a little bit more, because there are times where I watch him where I'm like, man, like he's just trying to be too cute. Like, you have good stuff, just attack. Yeah. And I think when he does that, he loses his sense of the strike zone, and that's when you find himself in the middle of the plate. He just found himself too much in the middle of the plate on Saturday. It was just there for the taking, and everybody can hit a 97-mile-an-hour fastball no matter where it is. If it's meaning if it's in the middle of the plate, not no matter where it is. But if it's well located, that'll play. But yeah, you're right. I think that's a good bet, Ron. That's a good bet if you're looking at one guy that's been back and forth that maybe hasn't seen the results. And really, he's seen some results at the AAA level, but that's been hit or miss too. He'd be a decent candidate, because he does remind me a lot of like that Keegan Thompson-ish, like Edward Alzolay. Like they came up, they hadn't seen success in the rotation as frequently as they needed, but they have lively arms, and if you could just get the mental stability to be a bullpen arm, a guy who could pitch every the next day to back, like, it's a weapon. But with him, like, it's all about throwing strikes and location. And I don't know if they would rush him into that spot so quickly, because he can't throw strikes consistently.
Well, and that's why I think maybe there's a world where, especially now that with Ben Brown's promotion to AAA,
right?
Maybe there's a world where maybe he's the odd man out, and they say, hey, Caleb, look, you're not going to start every 5th day anymore. You're going to the pen, and we're going to work you as this 2 to 3 inning guy, and we want you to just go out there and do you. Like, throw your shit and see what happens. And you give him a couple months of doing that, and then maybe when this Cubs bullpen could use another arm like that by the time he gets to the middle of the season, he's an internal candidate that can come up and maybe do something for you. Really interesting comment here from our fellow co-host, Mr. Tyler, who, as we noted, nearly back from his rehab stint. He's dangerously close and will likely be available on Tuesday. He says, "What's up, guys? Is it too early to start thinking about adding another starter to this rotation? If we are playoff contenders, big key there, is it too early to say, hey, maybe we should add someone now?" And then he followed that up by saying, because honestly, feels like the Cubs are in a spot where if they do decide to let guys just quote unquote figure it out, it could potentially be a big mistake. And I think that's an interesting thought. But again, I think that goes back to our conversation we kind of led the show off with, Juice, is what is this team? Like, is this front office ready to risk pieces of the future? I think they are in a world if it's a guy that's here for multiple years. They won't do it for a 1-year rental by any means, but a guy that's 3-4 years of control, maybe you do decide to do something like that. But again, I don't know how much of this future this front office is willing to sacrifice, for a guy or two that might work out, right? So again, I think it's an interesting thought. I don't think it's certainly out of the realm of possibility if it makes sense to the front office, but you have to ask that question really to the front office. What is this team this season? Are they just a middling team that's building for 2024, or are they legitimate? We're trying to make the playoffs and make some noise so that way we set ourselves up for 2024 to be another leapfrog year in terms of taking that next step forward.
Is there anybody on the DFA market right now, or like, because that's what I would think would be like if you're going to just add an arm. I think that's where it would be. I don't think they're trading like assets per se.
Yeah,
I think they would try their best to like find like Mad Bum already went, right? He's not. Yeah, I mean, and even that, like, he's been horrible. You probably don't want to bring that in. But no, you're right, Tyler. You're out. Having that extra guy right now would be so valuable, just to bridge the gap in some ways through this terrible run. Because what I fear is that these 3 losses are going to compound into even more losses that are frustrating against teams like the Nationals, the Cardinals, and then you're going to play the Miami Marlins again here at home. That's my fear, that you could find yourself back under 500 chasing even more, because this is a brutal stretch. But I guess, we're about to move on, but it is, the Nationals here that are coming on the schedule, and that's 4 winnable baseball games.
100%. I think quickly, Juice, just to kind of sum up this weekend, I think this is the time now where that veteran leadership needs to shine through. Right. I think that's where guys like Trey Mancini and Dansby Swanson and even Cody Bellinger to an extent, because of the success that they've seen in their big league careers with other franchises, and even Eric Hosmer. This is the Yan Gomes, same way. This is the time for these guys to kind of metaphorically take the locker room by the balls and say, look, guys, this is what we need to do to turn this shit around. Right. Put that garbage series against Miami in the past, reset, and let's just go to work and get the job done. They've proven they can beat good teams this year, right? They've proven they can beat bad teams. They've done it already. It's not like this is an 8-21 ball club like the fucking White Sox that just can't find a win. They've beaten good teams, but they've also lost very winnable games. And again, I think it's just this upcoming series, especially because of the nature of running into a bad team in their own ballpark, with 6 games at home and an off day in your future, this is where that veteran leadership needs to shine through, and these guys just need to dial in and focus for the next 4 days. You're back home in your own beds on Thursday night, and then you're welcoming the Fish back for 3 at Wrigley. And it's supposed to be a beautiful weekend temperature wise too. So let the ball fly, let the wind blow out into the bleachers, and let's get into some Cubs summer baseball. But as you noted, Juice, let's move on. We will not be back with you on Monday. As we have done the last few weeks now. We don't want to coincide with our friends over at Dingers, so be sure to check them out when they go live. They go live right about 8 o'clock Central Time on Monday. Join Mitch, Jake, Jeff, Kevin, whatever the mix of the crew is for the show. They will be live right here on the OnTap Sportsnet YouTube page, so be sure to tune in with them. We'll be back on Tuesday, so we'll preview kind of both games, at least the starting pitching, and just give our takes on what needs to happen. So for the Cubs on Monday, the pitching matchup is Drew Smyly against the young stud Mackenzie Gore. Gore's really good on the year, 3-1 on the season for this 10-17 Nationals team, a 3 ERA. with Smiley having a 3.21 ERA, and he's 2-1 on the year. And then on Tuesday, Hayden's got a positive record, 2-1 on the year. Wes Neston takes the bump for the Cubs. That 5.24 ERA hopefully continues to descend. And it's old friend of the Cubs, Trevor Williams, taking the bump for the Nats on Tuesday. He's 1-1 with a 4.10 ERA. Both of those are 6:05 Central Time starts. As they were out on the East Coast in the nation's capital. So, Juice, what are we expecting here for this 4-game set with the old Washington Nats?
I want the Cubs to go out and just take all 4 of these. End the road trip positively. Take all 4, have a 4-3 record. You feel much better about where they're at. You're getting 3 games against a team that just beat you after that. So you're able to just get some revenge. And then that would carry your momentum into a big Cardinal series with your rival at home during the week, which will obviously be looking heavily at that, as we hate that team more than anything in the world. But I will this team just has to get deep outings out of their starting pitchers that aren't named Stroman and Steele. Like tomorrow means so much if they can get 7 out of Smiley. It just sets up everything so much better for the rest of the week if you're able to get just some depth. It opens up so much more for David Ross. And go out and hit and beat the hell out. Like, get out there and within the first 3 innings be up like 5-6-0. Like, put this team in the ground the minute you get there and just kill their confidence. This was so sucky about this weekend. It was like, it's a beatable team in the Marlins, but the Cubs never came out and like took the lead and ran away and hid. Like, that's what we need to see out of this team, at least a little bit more, get deep pitching performances. And for my fly the W pick of this series, I'm going to go with Seiya Suzuki. He had a tough series against the Miami Marlins. He's been in a little bit of a slump. He needs to get himself back. He means so much in the middle of this lineup, because you're getting good at bats out of Wisdom, out of Belly. You need that third head, the third head of the dragon that ends up being that monster you don't want to pitch to, with guys like Ian and Dansby and Nico Horner at the top working those walks. Seiya means so much, and he grounded into a couple double plays over the weekend, squandered some scoring opportunities. I look for him to bounce back and then carry that momentum throughout the Marlins series, and then against the Cardinals as well. He needs to start having bigger games and making his presence known, because he is so important to this ball club.
Agreed. I definitely want to see strong starts out of the 4 and 5 guys in these first 2 games. We will get Stroman on Wednesday of this series. Unfortunately, if my math is correct, Tyone is not eligible to come off the 15-day until Thursday. So that Wednesday start, or actually that might, never mind. What the hell am I talking about? That might line up perfectly. We might get a Jameson Tyone start on Thursday. That should line him up perfectly to come back from the 15-day if he is in fact healthy, and he is doing okay. We could see him back, because as of now, the Cubs list their starter for that Thursday matchup as TBD. It will be Patrick Corbin, however, for the Nationals in that one. So, maybe you get Tyone back this series. Maybe he has a really good start. You take that momentum into Justin Steele at Wrigley on Friday, 1:20 start, against the Fish. You got Stroman. But like you said, man, the starters need to go deep in this series, save the bullpen, and the bats need to show up. For that reason, I'm going to ride the hot hand in terms of hitting right now. I think this guy can set the tone for this lineup. I think he's also a guy that that can also, he's truly the type of player that can carry you, because he's done it before. I'm going to go with Cody Bellinger as my fly the W player for this series. 2 home runs in the Miami series. I think he can absolutely carry that momentum over into this following series. He's fresh. He got a week off on paternity leave, and again, this is a former MVP we're talking about here. This guy clearly has the talent to carry a ball club if need be. And it feels like the perfect opportunity right now to be that spark plug for this Cubs lineup. So hopefully Belly can keep that going, and it's infectious, and your pick, Seiya, and others, follow suit and take 4 quickly here against the Nationals. So again, we'll be back Tuesday following that game. So we'll probably touch on both of the first two games, Monday and Tuesday. Again, be sure to tune in with our friends over at Dingers on Monday night. Juice, any final thoughts before we close this thing down?
No, I think I'm good for today. It just stop frustrating me. I hate when they lose, especially 3. I hate getting swept. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, 3 is definitely a kick in the dick. I'll agree with you there, man. Not fun, especially on the weekend too. But we're back. We're dialed in. Hopefully the Cubs feel the same way with the Nationals coming up here for 4 before they return to Wrigley for a 6-game homestand and then a well-needed off day come a week from this coming Thursday. As I mentioned, Cubs on Tap, one of 2 official Cubs podcasts, the On Tap Sports Network. Be sure to check out our friends at Dinger Cubs on Twitter and Instagram. Those boys will be live right here on the YouTube platform tomorrow. If you want to know when they go live, there's a real easy way to do that. First off, you subscribe to On Tap Sportsnet's YouTube page. And second off, you hit that little bell button, the little ringer notification button. It will tell you when any of our On Tap shows go live here on the YouTube, as Juice appropriately demonstrates for us what that'll sound like. But be sure to tune in with them tomorrow on Monday. We're back with you then on Tuesday, as we noted before. Be sure to follow us as well at Cubbies on Tap on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Luce on Tap. He's at Juice on Tap. That way. Sorry, my bad. I pointed the wrong way. Juice on Tap, Luce on Tap, Juice on Tap, Luce on Tap. Crack them, lock them, and fuck them, as Joey would always say. But be sure to follow them as well at Joey Knows Nothing, at Teddy Freddy 270, at Nick _on tap. We'll see those guys' faces returning to the lineup per se here in this coming week after some personal travels and things of that nature. Follow all of our other sports coverage as well. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks. Juice and I were just live with Bears on Tap recapping the NFL draft. Next step is training camp, and we'll have some good content to fill you in between that time with our boy Q. Be sure to follow the Bears Nation pod as well, as they do a great job covering the Bears and are part of the On Tap Sportsnet family. Again, Bulls, Blackhawks, Bulls on Tap, 4 Feathers. We'll be back in swing here with some off-season stuff probably in the next week or so. And they got a win today, but they still lost 3 out of 4, and they're one of the worst teams in the major leagues. So send your sad Southside loving friends over to our sad Southside loving friends over at Sox on Tap. They do a good job covering the boys over at 35th and Shield. So once again, ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsportsnet on social media, the On Tap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Juice, it's always a pleasure, buddy. We got to do double duty today here on this Sunday Funday, or in our case, not so Sunday Funday because of the Cubs being swept. But nonetheless, we're back with you on Tuesday. Join the Dinger Boys on Monday. And we got a full week of games coming up in Cubs baseball. Juice, what do you say, buddy? We get out of here the only way we know how. The Cubs on Tap.
Fuck the Cardinals.
And fuck the fish, too. And let's go Cubbies.